Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. John. John is here.
Here.
Is Scott available?
I think he should be on.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you see me, guys?
Can't see you, but your name is
Thank
up.
goodness no. Scott is present by Zoom. Stephanie.
Here.
Mark is absent. If you guys want to look over the agenda.
I'll motion to accept the agenda.
Motion by Stephanie to accept the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
I think we should kick the employee manual to a meeting where we got a full consensus of members. So I would, that's what would be my, and the fact that we just got it here this morning and haven't gone through it. I mean, it's, you know.
Is that all right with you, Stephanie, to approve without the employee manual?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second that then.
Motion by Stephanie to approve the agenda with the deletion of the employee manual, seconded by John. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Barring none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'm gonna look over the December 16th meeting minutes and the December 29th special meeting minutes. Could we identify on page 3 the COVID funds that were used a little better than just COVID funds, was it?
Okay.
Because we'd had COVID funds before that we'd already put
CARES.
into the budget. This was something else,
Right.
wasn't it?
Yeah, what are these COVID funds called, Wayne? For your...
For the, that were applied to the chip seal project.
Special.
I think that aren't the infrastructure COVID funds? I think it was incentive for infrastructure originally, but who knows what they ended up.
Structure COVID funds? Because the other ones were the CARES Act.
CARES Act.
CARES
funds,
Act
yeah.
funds.
This is like $44,000 or something, wasn't it?
Yep. I'll motion to accept the December 16th and 29th meeting minutes and dispense with the reading.
Motion by John to accept the December 16th and 29th special meetings, the minutes as presented, and dispense with the reading. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Stephanie. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Barring none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do we turn things over to you at this point, Sam?
Oh, yeah. So at this time, I will ask for nominations for chairman.
I would make a motion that the commission chair, the vice chair, and the commission board appointments all remain the same as 2021.
There's been a motion to have the chairman, vice chairman, and the board appointments stay the same as last year. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Steph. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any further discussion? We'll proceed to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Suppose you were hoping he's gonna nominate you.
No. No.
Well, you're pretty good at it.
I'll stay over here.
Well, you wouldn't have to move.
Guys want to look over the vouchers for,
All of them look like they are negatives, and that is because we don't have the new budget amounts in the system yet. That is on the schedule to happen before your guys' next meeting, so.
So just so everybody understands, once you put the amounts in there, those are the budgeted amounts for the 2022 budget.
Correct.
So then everything stays positive until we overspend that, unless we overspend it, and then it goes to a negative number.
Correct, correct. Unless it's one of those ones that, like there isn't a budget amount, like, you
and
know,
out
this,
account.
yeah, like the cities and the townships and stuff like that. I don't put a budget amount because any funds that we get just automatically get sent out to them, so.
And some of the special funds are definitely.
Yep, correct. Yep.
Did we figure out a way to flag the special funds? Are there, other than just, I suppose we can look at the prefix number on them.
You can look at the prefix number. If it's a general fund, it's gonna be 1,000,
Yeah.
and then anything else after that, yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise it will have, you know, general and then dash whatever usually,
Mhm.
so.
But some of the special funds do have an ongoing balance,
Mhm.
so that doesn't really help us there, but they'll start out negative right away then. A special fund that doesn't have a budgeted number will either be zero or a negative number right from the start.
It'll be 0.
Yeah.
Yep,
And the
yep.
minute something's spent, it'll be a negative number.
Yep.
Does it reimburse itself the minute the money comes in during the season, during the year, or does it wait till the close before it zeroes out again?
Close.
At the close,
Yep.
okay, so that negative number tells us how much has actually been spent in that account for the total year.
Correct. Yep.
So it's your job then to inform us whether or not there's money that is expected to come in there, or the money, or the account was being used for something without being funded. Okay,
Yep.
I'll go with that. So most of this is just distributing the money to the
Yep, yep,
to the different political entities within the state, within the county,
correct.
well, and outside the county, actually.
Yep, the first on pages 8 and 9, those are like the bills that you guys,
Yep.
for the county, but all the rest of them are just sending out.
All the South Central Dakota dues, that's the ones we split with the
Split.
cities, so.
Yep, 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 and last year we got from Hannaford and Cooperstown, we did not get from Binford. And I sent it multiple times and I did not receive anything back from them, so.
So we just paid a portion of that invoice then, or did the county pick up the slack?
The county would have picked up the slack for that one. Yep, because if we paid it, no, because we did not pay it last year until we
Okay.
received everything, so last year did not get paid.
Okay,
Yeah,
that was our intent, was,
yeah.
Yep.
because we don't, the county itself doesn't
Yeah,
utilize that, or hasn't for as far back as I can see.
No, I've never seen it. so-
that's the people that did the emergency planner that we need it updated again this, or
Yeah, but
soon.
we paid that, that's how they make money. They charge the county a fee for that, which was upwards of $35,000.
Okay,
Whether or not you're a member or not,
okay,
that's how they supposedly exist, is by doing things like that.
okay.
They're kind of a nest of grant writers.
Yeah,
So if there's grants available, they write the grants for
yeah.
the city of Cooperstown if they're looking to find
Yeah.
money for some project.
And they insert them, so, which wouldn't be bad if they were a free enterprise system, where if we could go to them and say, we're looking for this grant, what can you do for us? But they take it one more step, they make you be a member, which some people would call extortion, I wouldn't, but
Yeah.
some would. So they'll get paid, if Binford doesn't decide to be a member, they'll get paid a lesser amount, the South Central.
I'll probably pay in a lesser amount.
Yeah, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
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 I can't guarantee that they're gonna accept us as a member then if we're not paying the whole dues, but I
We
mean,
can only hope.
that's up to whoever
Yeah,
that is.
we can only hope.
Well, it's one of those, we aren't intending to be a member at all.
Right.
But if the cities and,
We're just a conduit.
yeah, if the cities utilize the service, they should
Yeah.
pay for the service, I guess, in my
Right.
opinion.
Because the city can be a standalone member of it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take the county, the city can be the
And
standalone.
the cities have utilized it
Yeah.
extensively, so.
Yeah. Okay,
So if you'd like to take that South Central Dakota Regional out of there, until I'm able to get everybody's, or all the cities.
Yeah, I'd like to see that out and divvied
Yeah.
up like we have the past
I agree.
4 or 5 years. I think
I
we've
agree.
done that.
You'll go to the Binford meeting and try and strong arm them, Wayne?
I was wondering if I was emailing the wrong person, because I mean, I would never get anything back from the
Ken
auditor.
Robertson.
Well, I'd send it to the auditor in Binford, and then I would talk to Ken, and he was like, "How about you just send it to me too,
Right.
so that then there's a double
And
check,
Gil-
so I
and
could."
Gilbertson's the chairman of the board.
He's
He's the mayor.
Okay, yeah, and then it was Lorraine Iverson.
Yeah,
Yeah, that I was trying to communicate and.
no, send it to Ken.
Okay.
There's a COVID relief funds.
COVID relief.
A pretty good chunk of the property taxes were paid before the first year, is that?
No.
Is it usually that much?
Symptom of, no,
No.
symptom of the times, a lot of money floating around. I'll move that we pay the bills as presented, less the South Central dues.
Motion by John to pay the bills as presented with the exception of the South Central Dakota Regional dues for $5,114. Is there a second?
I can second.
Second by Stephanie. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. John?
Aye.
Scott?
Yeah.
Scott votes aye. Stephanie?
Aye. Yep.
Dale votes aye. Motion carries.
Scott, can I ask you to do me a huge favor?
Yeah.
Can you mute yourself when you're not talking? Because otherwise we get all the feedback.
Okay. Hang on.
And then I can't hear John talking.
Yeah. Tell you what, maybe we'll just call Sam's number. That's probably easier, maybe.
Oh, you just hit mute.
I'm trying to figure. I don't know how to run this thing pretty good.
Oh.
Hang on. Let me look.
on the bottom.
Upper right-hand corner, probably on the keypad.
That work?
Nope. Still hear ya. Bottom left side, it says mute.
The thing about mute is if you ask if it works, it didn't work.
Sam, you have the ability to mute Scott.
I can mute him, but can he unmute himself or do I have to keep muting him, unmuting him?
I think he can unmute himself.
Okay. All right, Scott is muted now.
If you want, Scott, try to unmute yourself again. He's mute as Zoom. And maybe he can.
And I tried to unmute it and it says ask to unmute.
That's why I don't attend by Zoom, because she mutes me and then puts me back on.
When you think you're muted.
I was just thinking maybe you should.
I'm a little slow. It only took me 2 times to figure that out.
Oh, now he's calling in.
I can put you on speaker. Yep. Nope. Nope. Okay. Yep, that sounds good. Hold on one second. All right, you're on speaker.
Just with you, okay, as a speaker.
Yep.
Okay,
Steph,
that'll work better.
can you hear him?
Yep,
Perfect.
sorry, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Okay, we got the resolution to pay bills.
That's just a annual thing. Nothing new.
Yep. I'd move to approve the resolution, to let the auditor pay the bills.
Motion by John to approve the resolution to allow the auditor to pay the named bills in the resolution without coming before the board. Is there a second?
second.
Second by Stephanie. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Barring none, we'll proceed to vote. Is this a roll call?
Yeah.
John?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
Dale votes aye. Motion carries. Review the monthly office reports.
Fill me in on the CDs, the county CDs. There's 2 at Rivera and 1 at Bay Forward. What are those again? I forgot.
That would be from Connie. I can have her come in if you'd like.
I mean, I can ask her on my own time too, but I was just,
Yeah.
that's all right. I'll ask her on my own time.
Because I know we cashed in one of the CDs a few years ago, but I don't know about the other ones.
It's it's money that is pledged against the budgets. It's just a means of, it's just a longer term, a higher interest, or used to be a higher interest rate. Connie used to try to, rather than just collecting the interest that we got into check accounts, she'd put the money into the CDs. I think that just carries over from when we did it before. There isn't much difference in interest nowadays. I would imagine those are fairly short-term CDs. I think they're probably 6-month CDs, if memory serves correctly.
Connie's on her way in to explain them. Sorry.
So what's your question?
Oh,
CDs?
Steph was wondering what the CDs that we had, what the purpose of them was, and I think that's just trying to spread the money and collect a little more interest.
Yeah, it's to get more interest. They're included in the funds.
Yep,
None of them are designated for a specific fund.
no, they're pledged against the
But
general,
they're-
against the 2022 budget,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Sorry to make you come all this way, Connie.
That's okay.
I guess that was the only question
Okay.
That was,
that we had.
That's perfectly fine. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Connie.
Yep.
thank you, Connie.
Yep.
Do we approve the office reports? Please read them.
You usually do. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. I usually have a
approve
motion
them. No.
to accept them.
All motion.
Motion by Stephanie to approve the office reports as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Scott. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Barring none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do we have our human resource director or zone director?
Yep. So Abacus Representative Diane is with us by Zoom here for the countywide cost allocation, and then Jill, you're on here too, correct?
Yes, I am. Took me a minute to unmute myself, but yes, I am here. Thank you.
Perfect.
And yes, I'm Diane Blaschko. I'm here from Abacus to talk about the indirect cost plan.
So it's all in what questions you would like to ask them.
Okay, so I have questions on, on both sides of this. The money that we pay into the social services, how is that determined? What are our obligations? And how do the amounts weighed against the services provided? And then on the other side of it, the money that is paid to Griggs County for the building, all the services that we provide, what are our options there? What are we able to charge for? How much? Do we have any say over the amount? And what legislation is backing both of these programs? Because as a commissioner, I'm responsible to the citizens of North Dakota, of Griggs County, excuse me, to make sure that the monies that we are paying out and the monies we're receiving are both in the paying out, of course, at the minimum, in the receiving at the maximum. And the only way to determine that is to be able to determine how the state came up with these charges on both sides of the ledger. And I haven't seen any of that. Thusly, how can we be assured that we are being treated the same as everyone else, and that our citizens are getting the most bang for the buck? And typically, the answers to questions like this are, well, here's the amount that you need to pay. I want to know what backs that up, how it's determined, and what the legislative process was that brought that about.
So I guess Jill, I'm assuming that this is a question for you mostly because, and I know you're on mute, I can talk to you about what the indirect cost plan is and how that works. I can also talk to you about how in 2020 so right now we're working on the 2020 plan, and it's going to change pretty drastically because you're part of a zone, Griggs and Nelson is the host county. And so one of the things that's going to be a big change is the social service employees are no longer on your payroll, which means that you will no longer be able to charge a portion of payroll costing or accounting to social services because you're not processing any of their bills. What you will be able to charge, though, is any space-related cost, which will continue to do that. And any services that the social service employees are accessing that while they're because they're resident in Griggs County. So for instance, if they're using internet, if they're using space, if they have access to supplies, if your liability insurance covering the buildings and so forth, they get a portion of that. They can also get a portion of, of course, building maintenance and so forth. So those sorts of costs, we will continue to identify and charge, based on the variety of allocation bases that we use, and one of those is FTEs. And this year, for the first time, we'll have to add in what I'm calling non-resident FTEs, meaning, or non-county FTEs, which are those FTEs that are resident, but they're not part of your payroll. So when I run your payroll report, typically I would get a full-time equivalent report for doing a lot of these allocations. I won't have those social service employees. I'll have to add them back in for those cost areas where in fact that they get those costs. I think the state's attorney cost, and again, I don't know how that's going to work if that state's attorney cost goes to the zone. Part of that is based on the agreements that the counties within a zone have in terms of how they're doing cost sharing and so forth. And that it'll go back to, so all the money that gets identified in indirect cost plan, the state will issue that money to the zone, and then based on your county, your zone agreements, that money will then be dispersed back to counties or not, again, depending on what your zone set up when they set up that zone. Jill, did I say anything wrong, or did I describe that accurately?
Yes, that's how I understand it too. And I guess, when I met with the commission last time, I felt like there was maybe more questions related to the countywide cost allocation, and maybe I'm still not understanding the entire question that is being asked.
Well, it's a real simple question on both sides of this, and the question is that of accountability. So I understand that you have rules and regulations, and you're going to pay us for this and you're going to pay us for that. How do we understand what the maximum is that we could be paid for? How do we make sure that we're being paid for everything? How do we understand that we have to be paid for some of these things, or are we what are our options here?
Let me help.
No, you're not. Wait a minute. And the burden for this falls on you people. We are ultimately dispersing Griggs County taxpayer dollars. We are not to disperse dollars or accept dollars until we are sure that the money being dispersed is for a legitimate cause and it is a fair charge. We are not supposed to accept dollars that are less than the services we're providing. Now, just because you tell us that that's the correct way to do it, and you say, well, we did it with a formula, that doesn't do it. We need to know how you determine those values. And you're talking next year already. We were already paid money this year. We've already been assessed money this year. Let's look at those charges and what justified those charges and those payments. I'm afraid this isn't going to be able to be solved today, because I've already asked more questions than I'm quite sure that you were prepared to answer. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to go away. I want these answered, and I've been asking these questions for 3 years, and no one answers them.
Okay, so from the indirect cost plan standpoint, I can tell you that every year we do a review with each county, and we do have the cost plan document available, and our complete methodology of how we charge is completely transparent. So if you ever want to walk through those, I can walk you through the indirect cost plans, and I can show you how every dollar gets allocated. And our job is to follow the federal guidelines, and to make sure that we're not disproportionately charging any one fund. So the plan is fairly comprehensive. So like when we look at the auditor costs, for example, that we were able to distribute in the past, we were distributing it based on accounting transactions. And I can walk you through and show you exactly how all of those dollars are charged. And each year as we deliver the cost plan, we then have an opportunity to sit down with the county, usually with the county auditor, county social services, and now the zone directors will be included this year. so that we can go through and answer all of the and answer any questions that anyone might have about how the costs were accumulated and whether or not you're over or under charging. So like, for instance, technology, you know, were there costs within that, and everything reconciles back to your financials. So we can show you how your financials reconciled to the department that we're allocating, and then how within that department we allocated it out to your county departments. And then once we get those identified to social services, now that's where I kind of have to step back at that point, because at that point then your zone agreement takes over, and then and state regs and state guidelines says, okay, now how are we now going to distribute those costs? And right now, based on state legislation, it gets paid into the zone, and then based on your zone agreement, it gets certain costs get distributed back to the county, the non-host counties, and others reside with the host county to fund the ongoing social services within that department.
Here's an easy one. How do you determine this?
Okay.
How do you determine how much we receive for the building space? Real straightforward.
Okay, that's a good question. So first of all, for your building space, we don't have anything. Let me ask a question to be sure I'm clear on this. Do you have social services employees housed in county courthouse or county space?
Yes.
Okay. We take that square footage, and that square footage is then, like, we take the total cost of the building, and we will then divide that out amongst all the departments based on the square footage in those buildings. We take the building costs, which is your building department or your building maintenance department, and we again distribute all of those costs based on square footage, and that's determined based on the square footage that's assigned to each department.
Is this itemized somewhere?
Yes, in the indirect cost plan.
I would love to see reports showing that. That'd be,
I have them all. Whatever.
yeah, we have them.
Yep.
Mhm. And
Okay.
so then the next question is, do we have any say over what we charge for our building space? Or is that
No.
determined? Okay,
That's determined by a federal guideline that says you have to charge depreciation. So like a building that's over 50 years old, there is no building space. You can't charge anything on that building. But otherwise, you charge it based on the depreciation that you charge to your CAFR, or you charge it on a 50-year life. And that is determined by federal regulations.
okay, so are we obligated to provide building space?
That's a call that you would have to deal with your zone, whether or not you provide that space or not. If you want those employees, I mean, there are counties that host those employees in market space, which means that they have to pay for that, gets paid in some manner. And I don't know where the regulations are with this right now, or the guidelines from the state, because the state was trying to standardize across the state that certain costs had to be provided by the counties, and I don't know where building space fell in.
So what say did the county have when the social services, control of the social services were taken away from the county and went to the state? We were sold the program that it was gonna be under 100% state control. And then we were getting to a point now where, yes, it is 100% state control, but now county funding is having to support a lot of this. It goes without saying that if we are funding part of this program, we should have some control over what takes place in the program. That's common business. This isn't a slave master situation, or shouldn't be. And we have to be able to tell the citizens of Griggs County that, yes, you're spending money now on the social services, and here's what you're getting for it. And they need to be able to tell us through the election process on whether or not they're happy with that. But we don't know any of that, because we're just issued a bill and here's what you pay. And on the other side of it, we're given a check, here's what you get. And what's gonna stop that from escalating? What input do we have over that? And how did it get to this point when it was supposed to be back to 100% state control?
So it was never said it was going to be 100% state control. So what the state does give state dollars, and that pays for the direct. The indirect, though the state does pay, the indirect pays a portion, and that is based on 2018 expenses, okay? Now, I believe, Stephanie, I talked with you about that, and you stated that the money that you are getting for the indirect, that does cover all of the indirect costs, correct? That there hasn't had to be any county funding expended up until this point, correct?
We haven't paid out you guys any funds right now.
No, we just have, but we've been presented with a bill. We just haven't paid it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so so your statement would be incorrect. We've been presented with a bill, we just haven't paid it. So you're kind of proving the point here that we need to be able to be in control at least, and let me correct one thing. This has been going on for a long time, and I don't have a photographic memory, but I remember quite vividly someone from the state sitting here and telling us that when this was done, that the net financial effect on Griggs County for running social service would be zero. The money that you take in will cover the money you pay out. That's not the case anymore. And so why has that happened, and what's going to stop it from getting worse and worse and worse with the gross mismanagement that North Dakota has in their budgeting process? There's no doubt that they're looking for money anywhere and everywhere, and it's pretty easy to come to the county and say, you owe this and we're paying you this, and we have to have a say in that. And more importantly, we have to be shown what authority the state has to do that via the legislation, and then how are those costs and arrived at. And so just because that's the way it is doesn't mean that doesn't do it for me very well, but it's 4 years down the road and I'm still asking the same questions. Different people I'm asking them of though.
I guess Sam has the report that you're asking for, right, Sam?
The abacus cost allocation.
Sorry,
report, correct.
I meant to say,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jill.
sorry, I didn't mean to say Stephanie, I'm sorry, I was trying to say, I'm still trying to learn people, and so I apologize for that. This is not, I'm just trying to step in, and I don't know all of the numbers, I don't know all this stuff, and it's, I know for my zone, but I don't know for your zone at this point. And so I'm doing the best I can with it, so I apologize.
That's
And
fine.
Jill, I mean,
Okay,
I wonder if,
I'll put it in the simplest terminology so everybody can understand this. If you got a bill in the mail and it just gave you a lump sum amount, I think you would want to know what it was for. And on the converse of that, if you received a check and said this is payment in full for the services, you would want to know what services you provided and make sure that you got paid for everything involved. That's all we're asking for. I don't mean to be gruff about it, but I've asked this question of anybody and everybody that'll listen to me, and no one ever answers it. They always read off regulations, or that's the way it is, and that's the way it's going to be. Government at its worst.
so, I think the person that would be able to answer your questions probably the most, that's going to understand that has both sides of that, would be, Terry Trainer or someone from NDACO, or and maybe them and a combination of someone from the state that could explain who sent you the bill? The zone?
We got a bill from the zone we owe $10,016.86 for our indirect costs.
Okay, so then and again, I don't know all of this, but you should have also did you get a payment from the state for those indirect costs?
From the cost allocation, we received 13,
No, not from the countywide cost allocation, but from the state. And maybe that comes through Nelson County, but Nelson County gets a chunk of money that is supposed to cover all of those indirect costs.
Okay, so there we go.
Okay?
We finally got there. If truly we are going to be net zero financially involved in this, why are we financially involved in this? If you're gonna pay us to pay a bill that you send us, why send us the bill? And I can answer that for you, because you don't intend to keep us net zero financially involved in this. But if that's truly the case, then don't send us a bill, just keep our money and pay our cost with the money that you're gonna send us.
So part of that, and again, I wasn't part of your plan, your zone plan. That should have been spelled out in the zone plan. I have not seen that, and I am going to get myself a copy of it so I can take a peek at that to see, but that should have all been spelled out, how all that worked in the zone plan.
Yeah,
Are you on the zone board?
No, I'm
You're
going,
not on the zone board.
I'm going from what was promised to us when we just set this up, that this was gonna be zero net to the county, because we gave up all our ability to control this. And with the no ability to control costs, then we shouldn't have to be responsible for any costs. That's just a common business axiom. That's the way things are. And we were
I
assured
get
that's the
that.
way it was gonna
I
be.
get that.
And then all of a sudden, it's not that way. And it doesn't matter what the board says, because ultimately the county commission is responsible for distributing money. And we have to distribute the money, and we have to be able to make sure that the money we're distributing is for the cause that was intended to be. And
But the board would have been part of creating that zone plan. And that's why I was asking if you were on the board.
no, I'm not, no.
On the zone board.
Not on, the board cannot, the zone cannot control the financial goings on of the county. It's gotta be the other way around.
Yep,
Okay.
I understand that.
All right,
I understand that.
yeah,
But
So
but my point,
go ahead. So anyway, it still stands. I'd like to see the legislation, I'd like to see the formulas, I would like to see,
Well, Sam has the formulas.
I would like
right?
to,
I have the copy of the report.
I would like to see what went into building the formulas. How do you designate between Griggs County and Nelson County and the footage? All of it needs to be verified, but the main thing is, if it's gonna be net zero, then why isn't it net zero? Why do you charge us and then supposedly pay us money to cover what you charged us? All these questions have to have a legislative explanation. It's gotta be written down somewhere. Someone made these laws, and it's gotta be written down somewhere so that we can look at it and say, okay, I understand why that happened. Now I'm not mad at you people, now I'm mad at the legislators that did it.
My question is, wonder if we received, let's say we received 10,000 from
Con-
Nelson County, because that was our portion of the expense, or a portion, whatever, to cover the expenses. Wonder if our expenses were like it is now, 10,016, we're $16 over that 10. Would we, Nelson County, then give us $16 more to reimburse that expense? That Nelson County's own part?
again, I'd have to look at the
Okay.
zone plan to see
Okay.
what that was. Now, in my zone, we are getting plenty of money to cover the indirect, and in fact, there's money left at the end of the year. So I would be surprised if there wasn't enough money to cover those indirect costs.
Okay,
That was the plan, is that it was supposed to cover all of those indirect costs. So I would be surprised if there was a county charge or there was any that wasn't covered, but I need to do more digging into that.
sure. Sam,
Okay.
And Jill, just kind of a warning there. Again, remember the cost plans that we've seen so far have all been based on, the prior to the 2020 year when it all went into effect. And so this year, for the first time, because you're always doing a cost plan, and you're projecting it 2 years forward, and then there's a reconciliation. So this year, for the first year, we're going to be dealing with some reconciliations where the payment in 2020 was based on 2018. Now we're going to come to 2020 and say, oh, as a non-host county, there are services that were part of the formula before but are not now. That will reduce the amount of the non-host county payments and their services. And so that's why we're trying to work through these and get these plans done early this year so that we can give everybody a heads up and we can plan for it, because the 2020 plans will be applied to, 2022 reimbursements and kind of going forward. So that is one thing that's going to change in this next 2 years. We'll be going through that transition of, non-zones to a zone-based thing. And again, a lot of it'll be applicable based on the zone plans.
So my question. Go ahead. My question is, what gives the state the authority to then charge costs to the county? Where does that authority come from? Does that have to be mutual consent? Or is there an actual law that was put into place that I'm not aware of, that when the state took this over 100%, that they had the authority to charge back costs to the county? And what are those costs, and what are the obligations, and what are the parameters that set that? And why weren't we involved in, if that is all the case, why weren't we involved in that implementation?
Well, and I guess I'm just, I am a little surprised that you still have some of these questions at this stage in the game. That some of this wasn't described better or discussed better with you at the time when this was all coming into play. But truly, so the state pays for direct costs. The direct costs are staff, salaries, benefits. They will pay for computers. The state does not pay for phone systems, for computer tech programs. So, just if you need that random service or repair on your computer, they don't pay for those things. There's paper, the state, that is not considered a direct cost. That was all spelled out in the law. What was, there was the direct costs and there were the indirect costs. So the indirect costs come out of, there was also another pot coming from the state. Then they were paying each zone to cover those indirect costs. Now, there may be in some of those places where the indirect costs, there may not be enough money that's come from the state to cover those that the county would be asked to pay for.
That's correct, and that's to my point. When we were sold this, we were sold it on the fact that this would be a zero financial burden on the county, because of course, when the state took over the social services, they took away money that they were paying to us for social services that more than covered. Mm-hmm. We actually, Griggs County, because we did things, we were fiscally, the money that came to Griggs County, we were able to run social services and build up a little reserve while doing it. And when this got switched over to the state being in charge, now that buffer that we had there, which I think was $80,000, wasn't that right, Dale?
Yeah, I don't recall the number. It was, they bought a van, they forced them to spend it.
We had it within the social services program, and we'd been very conscientious in trying to run that thing as fiscally responsible as possible. So we did have a buffer there, When the state took that over, they made us spend that money on things we never would have spent the money on because they didn't want us to have any control, I believe. And so then all of a sudden we're completely dependent, social services completely dependent on the state for the money. And now it's getting to the point where you're telling me, and it's just common sense that bureaucracies always run afoul, that we're going to be responsible for more and more of the costs for social services when that wasn't the original agreement. And that was not how we were sold this. You can read regulation and bureaucratic protocol, but we were told flat out, the state's taking it over, they're gonna be in total charge of it, and they're gonna pay for it all. And that's the only reason we signed on to this thing.
So, I mean, I'm kind of maybe,
The
Excuse me,
question is, how
Sal?
much are we off?
What?
How much are we off? How much did we receive versus how much we pay out? What is the difference?
Connie found a receipt back in October for $11,223.75.
Steph, it's not so much that, it's what are we owed? What could we charge for the services we provide? What are we obligated to pay for the services that the state is providing? And that should be a zero number, according
You
to
guys
how we were
have,
sold this thing.
Well, if that's a zero number, we owe the Nelson County more money then, because they only billed us for 10,016, and they gave us 11.
No, they're different. We're getting the money from the state for our building. We gave them part of the building here. There should be
No, this,
go ahead.
this 11,222.75 is what was given to us. Is this correct, Sam? It was
That's
given to us to cover social services, right? Is that?
No, that was to cover the building costs, not the cost of not the indirect costs of with Nelson County. Two different accounts here, right? There's actually three. There's the reimbursement cost that is separate from all of these.
I think that's what's getting mixed up is the countywide cost allocation, the indirect, because they talk indirect, then the indirect monies that's coming from the state. So this 11,000, did that come from Nelson County?
that came yes, it came from Nelson County for social services, and Connie said that she found a receipt in October for $11,223.75.
So that would be to cover those indirect costs. That would be my guess. Not the building, not the countywide cost allocation, but the indirect costs, the paper, the phones, those items.
Okay. Well,
It was
we're
10,000.
not going to get anywhere. I'd like to know what we are due, what we are able to charge for, and what we are obligated to pay. And that's it. It's that simple. And then we can look at the difference between those, and we can decide where we're at. That's the only way to determine where we're at. And
I think to get the answers that you're looking for, we're gonna have to bring somebody from the state and NDACO in, someone from the state that can lay out, and show you where in the legislation it says, this is what is indirect, this is what the counties are obligated to pay for, and so forth. And someone from the state, it would have been Laurel Stein, but she's has moved on to a new position. They're hiring for her position right now. There's somebody up there right now in her kind of filling in. But I think that we're going to need someone from the state. At least, I don't know, Jill, you might be comfortable. I'm not comfortable representing that legislation, but someone from the state could represent that. Terry Trainer could, or someone from NDACO could maybe talk to how this all kind of happened and the background and why and stuff. I mean, I can explain to you the indirect cost on how I'm calculating it, but as far as some of your questions, your questions are really fundamental that are going back to what was promised and what was delivered and what's being expected right now. And those are just not things that I have any ability to answer for you.
I understand that. I'm not finding fault with either one of you. I find fault with the system that promises one thing and then doesn't take responsibility when they don't follow through with that. And the fact that we're being, let's The people from the state like coming and talking to me, so let's send them here.
Okay. If you're agreeable, I am talking to folks at the state. Jill, you and I could talk to some folks and see if we could get some, just explain the situation and see if we could get some people that would be willing to come down and have a conversation, or would be willing to come into a Zoom meeting like this and have a conversation with you.
But don't send them if they're gonna say that's the way it is and we can't do nothing about it. I wanna know what gave them the authority to say that's the way it is, and I wanna know what ability we have to challenge what they say. We are a standalone political body, and we can't be dictated to by another political body. We're responsible to the taxpayers of Griggs County, period. And to have the state tell us, well, this is the way it is and you gotta do it, doesn't work. And I know it works in most cases, but that's not the way things are done, and no one's gonna, and that's why I haven't taken, you aren't the first people who've told us exactly what you're telling us. And I appreciate that, but sooner or later, someone's gonna have to say that here's the way it is, and if you don't like it, then we'll have to change it and do something about it, but so far not.
I'd like to see spreadsheets, or, to where the cost allocations are figured.
I just sent you the plan. Steph, I just emailed you the plan
Yeah,
that I received last year.
but Steph?
I'm listening.
The spreadsheets are fine. I wanna see the authorization for those charges. I wanna see what authorized that to come about. And you'll find that the legislation said they'll leave it to the bureaucrats to set the rules for this thing. And so we didn't have any say in it. The say on the legislator side, they didn't have any say in it either. Because they didn't have one iota of sense on how to do this. They left it up to a bunch of bureaucrats. The bureaucrats did it. The legislators rubber stamped it, and we're supposed to live with it. So we've been through this with NDSU and a bunch of the entities, and yeah, they give us the formula, but they won't give us a rationale behind it or the authority behind it.
Well, how about if we do that? Why don't we take your questions back to NDACO and the state, see if we can't figure out who would be the right people to come answer your questions. And, I can put together some more details about the indirect cost plan in terms of, the methodologies that we follow, and I can give you copies of the federal regulations that define how those get done. And then we can maybe then talk about moving this, helping to get those answers for you then in a future meeting once we can get the right people here.
That sounds fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
that sounds great. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And the
Thank
can-
you so much.
Yeah, and the can goes sailing down the road.
I think, Scott, you had something else, correct?
Yeah. I found somebody to replace Steph on the social service board, his own board. You guys get that?
Yeah, and?
And it'd be Mark Lundy said he would serve.
Okay.
Can we make a motion today and get that taken care of?
No, that'll have to be put on the agenda.
We have to put it on the agenda
a
for
meeting.
next.
Okay. Can we do that for next time then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he had talked to me about this before, and that's why I said just human services zone, so that it could cover anything that we talked about with the zone.
Yeah, but an appointment has to be.
Okay, that's gotta be.
On agenda. That's fine.
Yeah, we'll put that on agenda for
For
next.
next week. Okay, next time. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. So, if Steph's gonna go off and I'll stay on. So,
Okay.
I guess on the social service indirect and direct costs, I don't have that squared away in my head, which,
So I was always under the assumption that the payment that we get from Nelson County, that $11,223.75, I always was under the assumption that was our part of the countywide cost allocation, and so that we only got the one payment. But that seemed like they were talking about that there's two. But Connie went back, and we only have one payment from them in 2021, and that was the only payment. And the way that Diane was talking, that they would send all those funds to the host county, which would have been Nelson, and then they would distribute it that way. So unless I'm misunderstanding that, I think we've only received that one payment.
And from reading between the lines, this year that amount is gonna be less.
Way less,
And
yeah.
it's gonna be less, and it's gonna be less. My point is, what is the authority to do what they're doing? Because if you don't identify the authority and just go along with, well, I guess that's what we owe, where does that lead?
But we got less and less those 1 years that
well,
they
if they're
were
gonna
uptown.
if they're gonna depreciate your office space over time, eventually they're not gonna pay you for it, then why wouldn't you have social services go on the free market and rent space? Because then they'll pay for it.
Well, that was my point, so.
But that's what they did when they were uptown at the bank space or whatever. The social services was paying, and then the cost allocation would pay them.
Yeah,
for
but
that
so
space.
if that's the case, then why can't we set the cost, the charge for it? So if they'll go to the free market and pay what the free market wants, why are we any different than the free market? Why are the citizens of Griggs County any different than the free market? Shouldn't they be due what anybody else would be due?
Because the cost to have that space doesn't decrease over time, it actually gets more expensive.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Value of the building should appreciate,
John,
not
this is Jamie.
depreciate.
I can do some checking. I understand what you're saying. If I remember right, there is a provision for the cost allocation somewhere in that bill, but that bill's like 90 pages long. So, or longer than that even, I think. But I'll see if I can find it. But I think that I actually think there is a provision within the code for it, but I'm not sure where it's at.
Well, that's fine if there's a provision, but then it has to be defined.
And I'm not sure if it is or not. Like you said, I'm not sure if it gives the opportunity for Bismarck or the administration of human services to make that determination, or if it is actually enumerated in the code. I'm not sure.
Right. But I mean, from what you said today, we don't have to provide the space. So if we're unhappy with the price we're getting, we could say, no, we're not providing the space. That should open up the road to negotiation, because what are they gonna pay on the free market for the space? We should be able to say, well, we'll do it for 95% of what it costs in the free market. But there's just a whole bunch of things that we're forced to take for granted that really we shouldn't have to in order to protect the taxpayers of Griggs County.
I'll do some research for next meeting and see if I can come up with something for you guys, or at least point out a section of the code. I'm not gonna say what it's, I mean, I don't know, I don't remember if it actually gives specific expenses. John, I'm guessing you probably do, but I don't remember where it's at, and I don't remember what exactly it says.
Well, she read it off. She said it was based on depreciation of the depreciated cost of the space, which is, as Dale pointed out, is just exactly the opposite of how space rents out. As you rent your space, you don't rent it for what the depreciated value is. You rent it for what the market value is.
Right.
Would you want to rent out your apartments for the depreciated value or what the market will bear?
Well, I mean, I don't think a person needs to even ask that question, because of course it's going to be what the market will bear, and I don't think the state is treating the counties right if the state is making the determination of the costs.
No, I mean, she said that. She said she read it off.
That was a federal regulation.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just it's just one of the overall problems with the way this is gonna be. The whole thing was sold to us is state's gonna take over social services, and Griggs County is not gonna have a say in social services, but they're also not gonna have any financial burden from social services. The first part of it they've held true to, we don't have any say in it. But now they're trying to bring back the financial burden of it, as all bureaucracies do. They can't run themselves, so they always have to depend on somebody else, another taxpayer, another funding source.
Right, and that's something that Mary and I have talked about leading up to this point, was that they weren't gonna foot the bill for all the services, but still wanted to have the control of it.
Yep. And if that's the case, and there's nothing we can do about it, the least we could do about it is to have our legislators, the people that voted for this, are supposed to be representing Griggs County, sit in here and tell us why they did that.
Well, and I think in order to change it, I think we need to sit down with the association and other counties and make sure that we do get it changed so it suits the counties instead of it's a two-way street instead of a one-way street, and the state gets the benefit.
Again, it isn't something new. It's been going on for years. But I don't think there's any need, Jamie, for you to research much yet until we see what they say.
We can't.
What's the story on the abatement, Sam?
Please disregard. That
Okay.
is the wrong one.
Okay.
So, yeah. We had two of the properties mixed up, and
We don't know yet. Yeah.
but there's not a mobile home on
Okay.
that one, so. Yeah. So we are just going to disregard that for now.
Old courthouse, new courthouse?
Nope.
Future business.
So what I have on the future business is the Human Services Zone appointment, board appointment, the Griggs County Employee Manual, and that's all I have right now. And then the road department stuff. Excuse me?
I'm sorry, guys, I couldn't get my mute off fast enough for old courthouse and new courthouse. I did email the state. I got a away from their computer message that they won't be back for a couple weeks. So when I find out, I'll let you guys know.
Thank you.
I saw a thing. It was the difference between business in America and Europe, and it was in Europe. I'll be on holiday for the next 3 months. If you have any questions, get a hold of me then. And in America, it's like, I had surgery yesterday. I could be reached at this number.
Yeah.
And that's about the truth of it.
Yep. Does someone go in and check the old courthouse once in a while?
I think Brian does
He does.
every once in a while, yeah.
Feeds the ghosts.
I guess I should tell you guys what the email kind of entailed. I just emailed them and said that there's things on the list that I don't think that there's worth for the county, and it's not worth it for the county to spend the time doing it unless you're gonna say yes to us being able to tear it down, because the next actions that we have to make all are contingent on being able to tear the courthouse down.
Yeah, is there a final solution to this? If we accomplish the actions they require, is the answer yes at the end of that period?
Right, and that's what I asked. It looks like the next steps are actually, in accordance with that email from last June, is to take it off the historic places, to seek salvage of parts of the courthouse and to place a plaque in place of the old courthouse. And so that's what I said, is just that, is this something that the state is actually gonna allow us to do? And if it is, then we'll look forward to doing these other things. But if we're just gonna chase our tail, then we might as well not even.
Well, the state, if the next one is to take it off the list of historic places, then the state has to sign off on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so until they do that, we're gonna be chasing our tail.
Yep, so maybe we are to a point where the ball's in their court. The way it's going, we better keep it. We'll have to move back in there when this one's shot.
Well, anybody have anything else for the good of the order?
I'm motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Motion by Stephanie, seconded by Scott to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Barring none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned at 3:48. Next meeting is January 20th at 2:30 p.m. in this room.